again, everyone. I'm Frank Gifford. Yesterday marked 27 years since we broadcast the very first edition of ABC's Wide World of Sports. It's really hard to believe. And today we begin our new year with two sports that are deeply ingrained in the history and the tradition of our show. From Atlantic City, we'll have amateur boxing as the USA, second ranked in the world, takes on the top-ranked Cubans in the dual match.
Cuba is home to the world's most dominant boxing team. They identify the best athletes early, placing the cream of the crop in the hands of KG head coach Alcides Segura, architect and keeper of this boxing juggernaut. In hopes of upgrading the United States program, the Americans have enlisted the services and expertise of Sugar Ray Leonard. Ray's experience and talent is a deep well from which young boxers can drink freely. Today, we'll see one of Ray's still just one victory for the United States, and they'll go on now to 112-pound class with Arthur Johnson against Pedro Reyes, a world-class boxer, an experienced fighter at 29, who is a world champion but never an Olympic champion. He missed, of course, in '84 as you look at him now in the locker room, and he may miss again this time if they boycott Seoul. Let's update that situation now with Donna De Verona.
January 1959. Fidel Castro's band of revolutionaries deposed the Batista regime, and the medal of a nation is recast. Communism in Cuba readjusted the priorities. Sports became an important propaganda tool, and as the signs proclaimed, a right of the people. There have been successes in track and field, and the Cuban baseball team is among the world's elite. But it is the boxers who are Cuba's showpiece. With an Olympic success rate of 5% higher than that of the Soviets, and 34% higher than that of the United States, they are the world's best. But as of now, the Cuban boxers will not be going to the 1988 Summer Olympics.
Right now, Cuba's participation in the Olympics is suspended, pending the possibility of co-hosting the Games by both parts of Korea. The Cuban athletes are preparing themselves, but would attend only if the Games are co-hosted. This is the decision made by our Cuban Olympic Committee.
So for the second consecutive Summer Olympics, the Cubans will be absent. Or will they? The deadline to accept an invitation to participate in the Olympic Games passed 3 months ago. The Cubans didn't respond, but the door's still open?
Because of the special situation that occurs between South Korea and North Korea, and because Cuba is intertwined in that relationship and the negotiation with North Korea, the executive board of the IOC felt that it was in the best interest of sport, frankly, that we leave the door open and continue to explore any possibility as a gesture of goodwill.
What are the chances they'll compete?
The door is still open, but I think it's closing slowly.
There have also been rumblings that the Cubans' host role for the 1991 Pan American Games would be in jeopardy unless they participate in Seoul. But those threats seem to have dissolved. With communist allies, East Germany and the Soviet Union, now committed to attending the Games, the Cubans will stand alone. Once again, the athlete will pay the full price for a government's political policies. This is Donna De Verona.
112 pounds. You're looking there at Cuban world champion Pedro Reyes, the reigning world champion. I think a little bit tall in that 5'4.5", and at 29 years of age, the oldest member of this Cuban squad.
From Minneapolis, Minnesota.
His opponent today is Arthur Johnson, Minneapolis, Minnesota, who's been the outstanding United States fighter, 112 pounds for 3 years, but he has yet to break through and really establish himself in the world class, Don.
Well, Arthur Johnson, a three-time United States champion, won a Goodwill Games gold medal, so he's had plenty of experience internationally. In against the man who heads this Cuban team, certainly in experience and world stature, Pedro Reyes. And he's boxing Johnson is off a very tough decision against Michael Carbajal a few minutes ago here. Gives the Cubans an 8-1 edge, not an edge, 8-1 dominance.
And their 15th straight victory in dual meets. Reyes will pick. You see he's at the southpaw on the left of your screen. He'll pick with that right jab. He's the classic amateur boxer, just wants to score points. Arthur Johnson, in becoming the first man to win 3 consecutive U.S. amateur titles, really has disdained the jab. He's a power puncher. He comes in winging hard punches with both hands, has a really solid left hook. He's coming off an operation to his right hand in January, and whether he babies that or not, we'll wait and see. Kept him from defending his title for an unprecedented 4th straight time.
And with Johnson, we'd best keep our heads up because he's studying television broadcasting.
Come on.
We told you at the top of the show that stop, box, and break were the three commands. You just heard a come on. Caution from the American referee to the Cuban boxer.
It's okay to ad-lib once in a while. I get kind of bored of those three.
And again, we see that the Cubans have not really done very well in taping their boxers. As the tape comes clean from Reyes' right glove.
You saw a good right hand just preceding that from Arthur Johnson. Halfway in the first round.
Because Arthur Johnson had hurt his right hand, he's said that he's worked more on his left jab. But as you saw in that exchange, when he gets into toe-to-toe, he really likes to throw power punches and not just point-scoring jabs.
Yeah, he's more comfortable finally with the right, but you can understand how it would take a while before he does get back to using it, but is again. And here is the Cuban coach for a quarter of a century or more.
Really an amazing man. When you dissect the greatness of this Cuban team, he really deserves an awful lot of credit.
When you go back to the American wins over the Cubans in Montreal, the Olympics of '76, he was in his 13th year by then as the coach of the Cuban team.
Oh my goodness gracious. The first time that I don't believe there was a caution against the Cuban boxer for low blows. That was a warning and a recommendation by the American judge, by the American referee Bob Wimberly of Paterson, New Jersey, that a point be deducted. And when you have two outstanding boxers in the ring like these two, that could be a very, very big point.
Cubans in an earlier bout were warned about an open glove, but nothing along these lines of a low blow. 15 seconds to go in the first round.
You do have the right to take away a point by a warning. You do not have to give three cautions, but it's very unusual to see one that quickly.
All right, round number one winding down. Stay with us. Don Chevrier with Alex Wallo back with you for the second round of the Arthur Johnson-Pedro Reyes bout here in the Cuba-U.S. meet. The Cubans dominate 8-1. A tough decision against Michael Carbajal. I thought he deserved to win the bout. It went to the Cuban Marcelo. Timothy Little's the only American winner over Jose Luis Hernandez by a 2-1 margin earlier. So Cubans have won their 15th consecutive dual meet, but still hopes survive here for an American victory or two as this match closes out.
I thought Pedro Reyes won the first round of this bout, Don. He was just busier, and Arthur Johnson waited too much. But with that 1-point deduction, that could have been an even round.
How much does Reyes skip from the judges just on sheer respect in terms of being a world champion and so dominant?
Once again, that's very difficult to say. Hopefully, a judge, when he looks at the bout, judges on what's going on in the ring and not on somebody's resume.
Well, I'm not sure they did in the Carbajal fight.
That was a very nice move there by Arthur Johnson. You saw him score with the left and then duck under the counter punch by Reyes coming back.
Johnson was not undone to the fact he was facing a fighter of Reyes' caliber. He's very confident coming in, as you know, telling us last night.
Arthur Johnson almost never blocks a punch. He always slips punches, so that puts him in a position to counter punch. He has not been doing that with much regularity here today.
Reyes really, by all accounts, should not be fighting today. This is his 12th wedding anniversary. And here he is in Atlantic City. He has never lost to the United States in dual meets, looking for his 4th consecutive win here.
This is his 8th trip to the United States, Don, including the dual meets and the North American Championships and the World Championships he's been to.
His victories include those over Steve McCrory and Michael Collins, a couple of name U.S. amateurs. So he's giving Johnson all he can handle here in the second round.
He's not blowing him away. I mean, he's the reigning world champion. He's 29. He's got tremendous experience. There's Pedro Reyes on the right of your screen here. He's not blowing Johnson out of the fight, but I don't think he's let him into it yet either.
Well, Johnson trying to back him up is paying a price. He's catching a lot coming in from Reyes.
A little bit less movement from Reyes here. He's standing his ground a little bit more, pushing Johnson back. I thought Johnson had the superior power. In this kind of exchange, I would think Johnson would dominate, but he is not as yet.
Reyes still banging very, very hard, wading in with the left hand now as the seconds wind down to the end of round 2. The third and final round for Arthur Johnson of the United States and world champion Pedro Reyes of Cuba. Johnson desperately trying to get the Americans a second win. On the surface, this team doesn't look that strong right now, but how do you see it, Alex, the American team?
Well, I think right now at this stage, obviously the Cubans are dominating at the dual meet level as they have throughout their career. The Americans always seem to be able, in an Olympic year, to have some people come out of the woodwork. I mean, even a name like Evander Holyfield wasn't even supposed to be on the U.S. Olympic team.
He is here today, by the way.
That's right, and he went forward, was only won the bronze in Los Angeles, but went on to become obviously such an outstanding talent. And that happens, that will happen in Olympic trials in July. People that we've never heard of, we've never seen these dual meets, have not necessarily participated in the U.S. ABF program, will come out of the woodwork and be forces to be reckoned with on the United States team. But they're going to need to improve substantially between now and then, even without the Cubans. There's Evander Holyfield, the undisputed cruiserweight, junior heavyweight champion of the world.
And some say the man with the best chance to someday down the road challenge Mike Tyson as he develops as a heavyweight.
Arthur Johnson inherited Evander Holyfield's mantle as the quietest member of the United States squad. Both men of very few words.
Although Carvajal might challenge him for that. Well, Johnson thought coming in he was too strong for the Cuban. Again, disregarding almost the reputation of Reyes. But Reyes has proved a very tough customer, especially on the infighting, as it continues now in this third round, midway through.
Pedro Reyes is a world champion, and he's really fighting like one. He's just doing little subtle things, not letting Arthur Johnson get set, making him move around, not letting him set his feet, build the power.
Down goes Johnson. He hit him with a ton of bricks with the left hand. He was wide open for it. A long look from the referee, and for now he'll let it continue as Reyes pours in all over him again.
Reyes came out of nowhere. Yeah, Reyes deserved that little bit of showboating he did right there. He scored a sensational knockdown against a quality boxer. Another standing 8 count. Oh,
no, just a caution for an open glove. Which again buys more time that Johnson appreciates.
Arthur Johnson coming forward. 40 seconds left in the bout. Arthur Johnson, remember in theory that punch counts only as much as a good stiff jab. My experience has been that that's nonsense.
Of course it is.
That kind of a spectacular knockdown is taken in a tremendous account by the people scoring the fight.
It has to impress you. If you're human, you're a judge, it has to impress you and affect your scoring. 20 seconds to go in the bout. But I think Johnson is so far behind anyway, it may not matter. At least not out of it, but behind on points to Reyes.
Give Arthur Johnson credit. He is boxing back here, trying to fight back. Ooh, he just laced this man twice there on the break, and yet does not get any caution from Bob Wimberly, the American referee. He should have been cautioned. He was hitting on the break. And hitting after the bell.
The bell, the way that they want to continue. They don't want to let it go. So we will have the decision between Reyes and Johnson from Atlantic City right after this. Arthur Johnson got caught in the third round against Pedro Reyes, and they await the decision here now. Let's have one look at the punch that dropped him. It was a dandy.
Just watch the Reyes left hand. Reyes with his back to you. Watch Arthur Johnson's right. Reyes rears back in his left, gets all his power behind it. A little bit of a delayed reaction as Johnson's legs go stiff and he goes down.
To his credit, though, he recovered well. He finished the bout. Here's the decision.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of this contest with a score of 2-1 in the red corner, Pedro Reyes.
Reyes wins another one for Cuba. Not that they need it. Their lead now is 9-1. More boxing a little later on from Atlantic City. But right now, let's go back to New York and join Frank Gifford.